Hello and welcome to my Flosstube. My name is Jacob. I am the owner and designer of Modern Folk Embroidery. Today is going to be, I hope, an exciting episode, at least it is for me, as I am launching a new range of patterns in my shop. Some of you might have seen the patterns somewhere else already, but there's a couple of brand new ones as well, so I hope it will be a little bit exciting for everyone. I'll come to that in a bit, but first I want to share with you a new pattern, a new period sampler, and a new finish. And it's actually a start and finish, as I stitch it in pretty much like 1 week time, sitting down, doing very monogamous stitching on this one. And it's in a way a fully finished object, as I did all of the finishing on it. It's this little sampler here, stitched it on, I think it is 40 count linen, which I tea-dyed. It's MHD 1864, and I love this sampler. It's a really very cheerful sampler with the beautiful, she stitched a lot of birds and two crazy red lions here and a beautiful deer eating a little flower, which is quite cool. And yeah, I really enjoyed stitching this and I could not put it down, and I really wanted to share it with you. So this morning I was actually stitching and finishing the hem, which I still have not done for a tutorial, but it will happen one day. And then I figured out that I actually thought that the linen was too light. When I saw the end result, it was too bright, too light, so I dumped the whole thing in some tea for a few minutes, washed it, rinsed it, and now I'm really happy with the slightly more grungy look of the linen. I really like it. It's not too grungy, but it's beautiful. I might give it even a little extra dye bath once more. Haven't decided yet. And because it's a fully finished one, I also signed it in some little stitches down here, my initials and the year I finished it. So this one is now ready to sew onto a piece of cotton and then put it on a frame, and then I'll bring that to the framers, and hopefully next time you see me this might be actually in a frame. And this pattern is available in the shop now as well. It comes in 3 different versions, or at least it's one pattern but with 3 color options. There is the color option for that I have stitched, which is an interpretation of the colors. This is the original. The interpretation of the colors from the front, with the exception that the yellows are so terribly muted that you could hardly see them on this one. So I decided to make them a little bit livelier, not quite as bright as the back, but similar. And the green as well was so muted that this color actually does not exist in the DMC range, and I decided to pick a still very muted grey, sort of grey-green color, but it's a little bit greener than what is seen on this sampler. So that's the option 1 that the sampler is. The second option is the colors on the back. Now this is dyed with, stitched with chemically dyed threads. The wool threads from the second half of the 19th century were all nearly chemically dyed, and they have a habit of some of the colors were very, very fleeting. For instance, this lovely grey color here is not grey, but it's very, very bright purple, as you can see here. And you can see that it's a very, very lively, cheerful sampler. Whoever she was, she must have had a lot of fun actually stitching this. So I've charted this for these colors, the colors as close as possible to the back of the sampler. So if you want to stitch that, you can do that as well. The third option that I have, I'm just going to put this carefully away first. Let's see. There. The third option is, because I was thinking what would it have been like if it had been stitched 150 years before. It probably would have had some really lovely sort of muted blues and grey, greens and some yellow. So this is the color option as well that I have for you, and when you stitch this you can just swap those colors out and use these instead. But like always, you can substitute any color for the colors you like. I know sometimes not everyone likes to stitch with colors that really look a lot like the linen that you stitch on. If you feel that it's too close, just swap it around for something either darker or brighter so it stands out more. There's a couple of colors on the sampler here. For instance, the stalks here, their bodies are nearly the same color as the linen, but I really like it, and I think if it's stitched thick enough you can really see it. Sometimes it's also a matter of just adding an extra thread to your stitching. So if you're stitching it with one thread over two on linen, maybe just add an extra thread for a piece to see if it gives a little bit of extra body to it. Anyway, that's my finished project that I have to show. I still have a really nice finish that I can't show with you yet, but I hope to do that very, very soon. It's the cover artwork, which is now completely finished and will be sent to Germany very soon for photography. Yes, I'm very excited about that project. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about today is the launch of a brand new section in my shop. So about, I think 5 years ago or something like that, I wanted to create a couple of slightly Halloween-y patterns, but I felt at the time, I don't know why, because when I'm looking back on it, it doesn't make sense, but at the time I felt that the patterns were not in line with the modern folk range of patterns. So I decided to open a separate Etsy shop called Dark Crosses. Some of you might have seen it, some of you might have never heard of this range of patterns, but that's also me. And recently I was thinking maybe I should bring this actually into my shop, and so people can actually see that. I can talk about it on my Flosstube channel, and it's easier for people to just all find it in my shop and all have everything together. So from today onwards, if you go to my website, the links are all in the drop down below as well. If you go to my website, you will find in the shop section a completely new section called Dark Crosses. I've called it Dark Crosses because it is not just Halloween patterns. It's patterns that are slightly more sinister, patterns that have a slightly humorous dark twist to them, or are just not Halloween in that cultural sense. I have a couple of things that I have stitched and a couple of patterns that I have updated from that period. The first one I will share with you is this one here, and it's called When I Am Dead and in My Grave. I have redesigned this. This I stitched 5 years ago, or even longer, I'm not sure. But I have changed the skull ever so slightly, and I've removed this and have these branches sort of go around it. I like it a bit better. If you have stitched it like this already, it's fine. I'm happy with this as well, but I am, because I want to keep it up to date, I am going to unpick the skull, the top bit, to just have it fit with what I have designed, and this as well, I'm going to do that. I'm not sure what thread I used. I think it might have been Sajou, and I think I used 2 threads over 2 on 32 count linen, and this is Zweigart linen that I hand tea-dyed. But yeah, this is a fun little sampler, and once it's finished I'm going to frame this one as well. The text that you see on here is actually a text that this little girl, Elizabeth Groves, stitched in 1822, and I came across this sampler, or the text at least, when I was doing research in the York Museum's Trust archives years ago, and the sampler really struck a chord with me. It was a very cheerful sampler, so it was a very strange sort of juxtaposition between happy colours and a very gloomy verse that she stitched. But yeah, I thought it would be fun for Dark Crosses to use her words and her lettering as well. and it includes all the awkward spellings of words such as friends here with without an I, and the inverted N, and it's quite a wonky lettering that she used, which I really like. And I sort of tried to preserve all of that in this little sampler, and I decorated the skull and the branches and the borders and everything, and added a whole alphabet set to it as well. And that's this one here. There are quite a few hoops as well that I have. The first one, apologies for the framing, this is not really how they were framed originally, but I wanted to show them in little 5-inch hoops, but then I found out that this is quite terrible linen. I have no idea what it is, but it is not 32 count, so it is actually too big, but I thought I'd show you. This is Welcome to My Castle. A little spooky Halloween decoration, this one. It's a little hoop. You can stitch it with the circular design around it or not if you choose to. I really enjoyed working on this one. I have no idea what floss I used. I think this might have been wool that I stitched this with, but I'm not sure. The second one is the Death Head Moth here. And this is also a really fun. This is a really quick stitch. This is something you could start and finish in one day. It's very straightforward. I have absolutely no idea again about the linen and the floss that I've used. This is Zweigart linen, that's for sure, and it's 32 count. But the floss, I might have dyed this myself, some wool. It does feel like wool. But that's this one here. That's the moth. This one is the Cranky Owl. That's a really fun project as well, this one. Again, it is something that you can easily stitch in 1 or 2 days, I think, if you are a quick stitcher at least. And the fun thing is as well that Caroline from Off the Grid Needle Arts here on Flosstube and her shop evertote.com, you can purchase this chart from her and another a slightly bigger chart as well. And she does stock quite a few patterns and things from me. And she has really, really beautiful floss. The Leo and Roxy floss is absolutely fantastic. If I were to stitch these again, and I will be stitching more, I would actually pick Leo and Roxy floss to do it, because it has a really nice subtle variegation. It's not too wild, and it does look very well. And it works really nice. It's nice and soft. I really enjoy it, and it's a good strong thread as well. There is one, I think it is called Chalkboard, which is my favorite of the whole lot, but they have a beautiful range of lots of different blacks. But Chalkboard is really nice because it has a nice subtle variegation, and it's dark, but it's not 310 black. But yeah, this one is the little grumpy owl. And so you can get all of those in my new shop, but also you can get this one from Evertote, printed out in a beautiful booklet form, and you can get the flosses to go with it. And yeah, this is the last of the hoops, and this is Calavera, which is a Mexican sugar skull. And now I designed this years ago, and we learn stuff. We learn stuff over the years about different cultures and everything. And I sort of looked at a lot of Mexican things as quirky and slightly Halloween-y. But you know, when you learn more about things, and especially when I was doing the research for this, these are not like Halloween decorations at all. They are used for celebrations of Dia de Muertos, the Day of the Dead, and it is a celebration. On the 1st and 2nd of November, where the lives of those who have passed away are celebrated, and those who have passed away are remembered with little altars, and on those altars they place pictures of the deceased. They light candles, and there's sugar skulls as well that are placed on it as offerings. The sugar skulls are also given to children as little gifts, and they are beautifully decorated with bright colors and everything. So I think when you stitch this, you could choose to just stitch it monochrome like I have here, or you could stitch the skull white, but then use lots of colors to actually do the stitching and fill it with some white to give it that typical look. And yes, so this is something, it's not a spooky thing, it's not a Halloween thing, it is a beautiful Mexican tradition honoring the ones who have passed, and I think it's a really beautiful thing to keep it that way. I have always been fascinated with the Day of the Dead in Mexico, as my birthday falls on that, so that's quite exciting for me. The other Mexican one that I have is based on a beautiful print from 1913 by Jose Guadalupe Posada, and he was a very famous Mexican illustrator, and one of his most famous prints is a pretty lady, Mexican lady from the upper classes, dressed in Western style, and he called her La Calavera Catrina, which basically means something like the dapper skeleton, or the smart looking corpse, and or skull. Calavera can sort of, I think I've seen it being translated as skeleton or as skull, and he was kind of mocking the sort of the middle upper classes in Mexico who had a lot of money and wanted to show it off, and were obsessed with Western dress and fancy hats and big skirts and things, and they were kind of turning their back on traditional Mexican dress of the indigenous people. And he sort of mocked her by representing her like that, with a big hat with feathers on her, and I created that little pattern in honor of her. So that's my take on La Calavera Catrina there for you. And that's also a Day of the Dead style sampler. Now, if you stitch them, it is still summer, at least in this part of the world. Chris from Chris Cross Stitch has a really fun hashtag called Spooky Summer Sal, and you can join people stitching Halloweeny patterns that are spooky, and I'm going to start a couple of them as well over the coming weeks, as long as it's summer. We've got a nice little break coming up, and I will be bringing some stitching with me and sharing those with that hashtag while we are away as well. And it is Chris's birthday as well today, and he's got a new video today, if I am correct as well. So a very happy birthday to you, Chris, as well. That is it from me for this episode. I'm going to try and keep it short today. I think I've mentioned everything I needed to say today. The new patterns are all in the shop. You can get threads from Caroline of the Grid Needle Arts. She has a video, I think, today as well, or perhaps tomorrow. So make sure to check her out as well. I'll link to that in this video as well. And finally, I am going to say goodbye to you with a little song that I wrote based on one of the patterns in the shop. For now, stay safe, take care of yourself and each other, and I'll see you soon again. Bye-bye.
Mr. Bones in the garden spends many hours digging up weeds and pruning dead flowers, from which such delicate petals unfurled. The brevity of this mortal world life is but brief, and all things must pass.